All right, now, Neil Simon and I just admitted we did have a fairly zen conversation. I don't know where it came from in our past or whatever, but it was interesting. And joining us right now is a man who may be the antithesis in terms of his values of what we were just talking about. This is Stephen West. Stephen West is a self-made millionaire. He's written a book called How to Live Like a Millionaire. He conducts seminars all around the country, helping people to be successful, helping them to get a lot of the possessions.
Because it seems to me that if one's addicted to money, then it gets into difficulty. As an example, I met two gentlemen before the show here who were involved in prison art, and they're trying to help the world.
They'll be with us later on.
Okay. Now, I'm going to help them in some way because they have a very worthwhile project, and we have a bunch of department stores in Detroit who can help sell their artwork.
Good.
Money can be a tool to make it a better world. It doesn't have to be something you gather. I have no rings. I have no chains hanging from my neck today. Neil and I are dressed on a comparable basis. I guess neither one of us are looking too fancy. So I think, for most of us, a level of money is important. It's the addiction to keep reaching for more and more money that's more difficult.
There is an addiction. Once you want to have it, then once you want to have it, you're going to become depressed if you don't get it. But in this book, How to Live Like a Millionaire, you talk about a lot of tricks and things that people can do, even though they're not millionaires, and I've got a couple of them down here. Neil, I think you'll find this interesting. How to get a luxury home without a down payment. Right. Now, how do you do that?
Well, you know,
I'm sure Neil had to even put a down payment on his house.
Well, not necessarily. I've read some of Neil's stuff and seen his stuff. He knows life as it really is, and life is not reality. Life is, to a great extent, an illusion.
Life, all is illusion. Reality. Now we're back at the Zen now.
I knew we'd get back to agreeing with each other. But actually, most people don't realize, Bill, that you can rent homes and do what's called a lease purchase. Let's say that you find a magnificent home out in Long Island, and it's been sitting up for sale for a year, and the owner is accruing taxes and expenses and electricity. Many people will go out and lease purchase a house. They'll take a fantastic mansion, say, look, I can't quite afford now to pay for the house, but I'd like to try it. So if your mortgage and your taxes are $800 a month, I'll pay you that at least, and I'll take an option on buying the home for $120,000.
So this is one of the tricks you indicate how to live like a millionaire. You can have the big house.
Exactly, and one can walk in with the first month's rental payment. Now, if you or I were stuck with a home in Long Island and we're building up the mortgage payments, we might just be attracted to that concept.
Okay, now a couple other things. For example, how to get VIP treatment from airlines and restaurants. Now let's take a person who's watching right now who's flying to Akron, Ohio over the weekend, or Cleveland, Ohio over the weekend. How do they get a VIP treatment on the airlines?
Actually, most of us don't know this, but the airlines actually put it in their computer if you're a VIP or not.
Yeah, but how do you let them know?
You just have your secretary call and say, Mr. Boggs is coming on, and, you know, he's a TV personality, he's well known, he's well respected. Please be sure he's taken care of. He's a little bit fussy, and they fall over themselves.
Okay, but see, the shoemaker across the street is watching right now.
He has
right?
his wife call up and say,
how to live like a millionaire. He wants to go. He wants to go to Akron.
Absolutely.
He doesn't have a TV show.
His wife calls up and says that Joe Shoemaker is a major shoemaker here in town, very well respected.
Lying then?
No. Exaggerating.
Exaggeration. Huh?
He might be a major shoemaker in town. Right. But I think it's a question of just going out of the ordinary, whether it's the maitre d' at the Four Seasons or whether it's the American Airlines to Akron. All you have to do is just ask for something. Quite often you get it. Now, if you ask the airline for some special treatment, often you get it.
Neil, I'd like you to talk just for a moment, because we're really talking about success when we say how to live like a millionaire. You have probably in your life seen people drastically change the way they perceive you because of their perceptions of your success.
Was that a question?
Yes. No, that was you have a problem.
Mark. Yes.
Yeah.
Their attitudes, I think, changed towards me very early on when suddenly you are catapulted into some fame and success, and they think that you have been to a place that they have not been to. It's like you have walked on the moon, and you come back, and they treat you differently.
What ways? Like how, specifically, how would people...
I remember, for example, members of the family, cousins and relations like that would stop calling me on the phone. And they would call my mother instead and say, how is Neil, and could we get tickets for the show? And she said, well, why don't you call him? I said, well, he's busy. I don't want to bother him. Before, they used to bother me all the time. It didn't really affect me greatly, but I did begin to see the separation. People do separate you, and they imagine that you live a lifestyle commensurate with what they read in the movie columns, I think.
Again, like specifically, can you think of something that people thought that they assumed you were doing because you were successful that you hadn't even considered doing?
Well, I mean, I keep getting interviews, and people say, well, why don't you buy a yacht? And for one thing, I get seasick. There's no point in buying a yacht. I don't know. Imagine why they think that my life would change so extraordinarily.
Also, as a writer, a man who probably grew up from the time you were being a little child, really observing and drawing from people, right? And all of a sudden to become successful and then to be so observed, does that affect you at all?
Well, it's affected me because I once thought that I was invisible when I was 8 or 9 years old. Invisible because
Seriously?
I was one of those nice, quiet little boys who sat on a chair when he went to visit his grandmother, and they gave him a cookie and left him alone all day long. And I was growing up that way, and I said, no one ever notices me. I am a complete non-entity. And in a way, being a writer, you hold on to that sort of anonymity. You are behind the typewriter, no one gets to see you. And suddenly your work is put on the stage and they like it, and another one is liked, and suddenly you become very famous. And so the person who becomes famous is the one who put down all of those words. But I am still me, that kid who grew up in the Bronx thinking I am this non-entity. And getting those two people together was quite a job. They're meeting, I think, a week from Thursday.
I hope they have a good time together. I hope one isn't late for the meeting. Stephen, get back. What motivates you to be a millionaire? I mean, you are supposedly a millionaire several times over. Why are you doing it?
Well, I guess why have I done it, probably?
Why have you done it?
Because I really don't care to go beyond this point particularly. I have other objectives now. I think I came from Brooklyn. I was the poor kid from Brooklyn, and I'm meeting my other half now also, you see. And as you grow up in Brooklyn and getting a Spalding to play stickball with is a very big thing. And if you lose it and hit it over the roof, you can't play ball for a couple of days till you shovel some snow or something. You develop a hunger. You develop a motivational pattern. And so you began to search in what makes Sammy run. And then you run a little bit and you achieve some success, and all of us who succeed fail also. There's no man who ever makes it all without a failure. And you get there and you get there, and I went through a chapter 2 also. I'm remarried to a very beautiful and wonderful person who I met instantly. I saw her across at a show and I said, that girl is for me. And at the stationery show I met Sherry. And so you go through
a stationery store?
It was a stationery show.
Oh.
Stationery show in New York in the Coliseum 2 years ago. And I saw this
A dancing envelope or something?
She was very beautiful, Neil. Very beautiful. Matter of fact, she was in a very fine package, as a matter of fact. Totally drew attention. And so I've gone through that stage as well. I think the motivation is almost automatic and subconscious. Again, not to get into Zen, but you're making up for early deprivation. That's true for most of us.
Were you really poor when you were a kid?
Not really, but I saw a lot of things I couldn't have. You know, if I wanted a guitar, that was out of the question. I was middle class in Brooklyn and reaching. And when I went to the Wharton School, now you went to Penn also.
Yeah, I did.
And that was
same time you were there.
That was a traumatic experience. On my floor, I had the gentleman whose father was the president of the country of Columbia. Another gentleman whose father owned Burke's Meat with 2,000 trucks in Philadelphia. Another fellow was a poverty case who was brought in on a scholarship. And the divergence of all these personalities. And one person lived in a mansion in Bryn Mawr. Another person lived in a ghetto in Chicago. And you develop a comparison. You develop a hunger. And you come out of the Wharton School all fired up.
Let's hear it for diversity.
Okay.
So you're all fired up to make a lot of money.
I was, and then I realized there's a declining utility to money. Now, it's great to live well, and it's great to have a beautiful home, but if you keep being addicted to it, that's a great negative.
You know, I'm sitting here wondering about if I should ask this. I'm just going to do it.
That's okay.
You talk an awful lot about being really successful and impressing people. I am really curious as to why you've bleached your hair.
Well, actually, I've tinted my hair.
I don't mean that as but you are supposed to be a symbol of a guy who's being successful.
Right.
And I took one look and I said, geez, this guy's his hair is really this odd color. And I'm just curious.
Well, Bill, actually, people have a right to achieve anything they want in life. And
no question
whether it's wearing a pinstripe suit or whether it's wearing a paisley tie, we each have our own impression.
But is that part of your success aura, is my actual question.
I think a person has a right to be what he chooses to be.
Of course.
Whether he changes his name from Jack Rosenberg to Werner Erhard or to Bill Boggs, or whether he decides to wear a paisley suit, I think we all have our own objectives in life. It can be pretty much whatever you want. And if you limit your horizon and say, well, gee, you can't do that because you've got a program and a mechanism in your head.
I totally agree with that. My motto is defy category. Don't let them put you in a category. But I'm just serious. I'm just curious as to whether or not it's part of, you think that it makes you more successful.
Well, it satisfies me.
Satisfies.
And that's really all that matters. And whether a person out in the audience is satisfied in driving a Cadillac or not, or whether a person is satisfied. If Neil gets seasick in a yacht, it'd be foolish for him to have a yacht.
Correct.
But if he derives pleasure out of it, and if it doesn't hurt anybody, whether that's Zen or not, that's perfectly okay.
I agree completely. One last thing from How to Live Like a Millionaire, very quickly. You say how to make friends with 100 successful people.
Well, yeah,
The shoemaker across the street, again.
Right.
How does he do it?
Well, the shoemaker, of course, you understand there's a book called Who's Who, and there are various books that list people.
Right.
In order to achieve success, Napoleon Hill says you want to associate with successful people, Bill. Now, whether it's the shoemaker or whether it's more likely a person who has a little different level of aspiration, you join a club, you join your church, you join your synagogue, and you seek out people who have common objectives to you. Now, you just can't go and social climb and hang in there if in fact you're an influence leader in this community, and you and I have some common areas of interest, and I might choose to try and befriend you. If you choose to accept me, I'd approach you. I'd either write you, I'd call you on the phone, I'd invite you to a party, I'd join the club that you have, but I'd want to come into contact with successful people, because there's a vibration that good people put out, and you want to be part of it.
I understand that, but cultivation is a very important word there.
Certainly.
Let's take a break. We'll come back with Jim.